In 1982, a film called Poltergeist was released. Now, Poltergeist is held up by quite a few people as a sort of horror classic, and there are other people who actually detract from it and they think it's a bit too much. There's a bit too much polish to the film, that it's too bubblegum, too Hollywood to be considered one of the greats. I don't put it up there with some of the other films I've talked about, like The Shining and The Haunting and films of that quality, but I think it's a really, really well made horror film. Now, Poltergeist is about a family who live in this relatively new community, sort of suburban area, and while they're there, they discover that there's a few ghostly goings on start occurring, some furniture starts moving, things like that, and their daughter Carol Ann seems to be the focus of the spirit's attention. What happens is Carol Ann is then seems to be abducted into the spirit world, and the rest of the film is about this family coming together and trying to get her back. It's excellent, but before I talk about some of the things that make it great, there is a controversy surrounding this film, in that Tobe Hooper, the director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the made-for-television adaptation of Salem's Lot, was the director, and a lot of people feel, and a lot of people have claimed, that it wasn't actually him. He was director in name only, that it was actually Steven Spielberg that directed the film. You see, at the time, Spielberg was involved heavily with pre-production, and I think he was working on E.T. at the time, and he had an agreement or a contract with, I think it was Universal, who basically said he couldn't work on anything else while he was working on E.T. So what happened was, well, so the story goes, the rumour is that he then hired a director in name only to do some of the sort of manual work, and he would come in and basically be the main creative force behind the actual film, because I think he still produced, and people within the crew have said that Steven Spielberg, for example, storyboarded the entire film, which would then make me think that he probably did direct it, because that's him composing all of the shots. And also some of the actors there have said that Steven Spielberg was the person that they went to for any problems, and when they would ask Steven Spielberg about, they would ask for direction, it was all Steven Spielberg that gave them it, even though Tobe Hooper was there. Anyway, so that aside, that controversy aside, it does, by the way, feel like you would imagine if Steven Spielberg tried to direct a horror film. It does feel like a Steven Spielberg film. It's got that sort of sentimental touch to the film that sort of well, some people would say plague Spielberg's early movies, but for me, I like the sentimentality of films like this and E.T. So anyway, it works really well, because it's kind of, there's part of it is sort of, a moral tale about a family and how they come together to try and get one of their own back. And on top of that, it's got a good sense of humour. There's some really funny bits in it. The last shot of the film is hilarious, actually, with Craig Nelson in that TV. And on top of that, there are actually some really, for me, eerie moments. There are things in this film that you will always hear people talk about. They'll talk about the clown under the bed, and how that sort of terrified them, a toy clown coming to life. The tree outside that comes to life, and the skeletons that pop up, and the spirit lights that you see in the house, and the guy tearing his own face off. It doesn't really sound like a family film there, does it? In fact, it sounds very much like a fantasy film, and there are elements of it that feel like it's bordering on fantasy. So it's a strange mix of like a family drama, a comedy film, a feel-good comedy film, a horror film, and a fantasy film. It's quite sort of strange that way, but It's very effective at all those things, and there's not really anything else quite like it, because most other films that try to be family orientated in that way and be ghost stories, most of the time they fail. The only time I can really think of another ghost story that did that was successful was a film that I've mentioned in another video called The Uninvited, which I'm going to do a full video on, which was a ghost story from the 1940s, and it was very much a comedy, but it had some really eerie moments in it as well, and it worked really well as a ghost story. So I would suggest Poltergeist is fantastic. The sequel, as much as it's a bit maligned by people, it's actually pretty good. It's got some chilling moments in it as well, but I'll do another video on that one. The cast are fantastic. There is what's supposedly called the Poltergeist curse, where I think 4 people that were working on the film died. And unfortunately, Heather O'Rourke, who starred in the film, died years later, but she was just a young girl, and the actress that played her sister in the film was murdered not long after Poltergeist. But I don't know if I believe in all of that or not, but it's a great film, and it's got some genuine chills and it's exciting, so I would definitely say go and watch it.